I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the Will Gather podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of diving into a couple different topics with someone I respect. We've been connected for a little while, and I always value his insights into what is happening in the world of caregiving and bringing tools and tech to older adults that are socially isolated. Today, my guest is Michael Mann, Managing Director of Tachyon Insights. It is a boutique healthcare consulting firm. He's passionate about serving healthcare providers, home care, payers, hospitals, and digital health startups. He has his pulse on what is happening in the world of technology, health tech that supports family caregivers and older adults. He holds a master's degree in healthcare administration, and you'll hear a little bit more about his background and how he brings what he knows into now his caregiving journey with his dad. We talk about the perspective from a male point of view, what challenges are in place for caregivers right now. As a recent moderator at the HCT Healthcare Tech Conference, he brings his insight into what businesses are coming together to provide leadership and address care concerns to support those families, the framework that is in place for companies that are socially minded and socially conscious businesses addressing global health. We also talk about his perspective on big tech such as Amazon and Apple moving into the older adult healthcare space and how he is hopeful as we move through these next few years and options to support caregivers. Having Michael share his story and educating us about what's happening in our world, we are not alone and people really matter and their voice matters. Do not miss my conversation with Michael Mann. Hi, Michael. It's so fun to see you again. We had such a great conversation. The first time that we spoke, I was looking forward to continuing that today. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love for you to share with us more about your background, kind of how you got into this space. I know you do have a personal connection with taking care of your dad, your mom and dad, and I'd love for you to share with us a little bit more about that and what brings you into this unique space today.
Yeah, no, sure. So I have a background in healthcare. I've been in healthcare. I was in education first, special educator, transitioned from that into social work as a social worker in skilled nursing facilities. So right there was like ground zero to learn everything and anything about what I would call discoordinated care.
Yeah.
Trying to figure everything out, trying to get, the residents, as we called them, because they weren't patients, they're residents in the community, back home safely with home care, DME, whatever it is that they need, and make sure that that starts when they get home. So that was kind of my start to healthcare, and sort of subsequently moved up, got my administrator license, assisted living, got my certification as a geriatric care manager, was able to have a home care, kind of care transitions, care management organization for several years during the ACA. And I went back to school, got my master's in healthcare administration at George Washington University. And so from there on, I've been doing a lot of healthcare consulting, working on projects. And one of the things that was kind of also that was helpful was working in senior living communities. I served it as the chief commercial officer at Sagely, really trying to help add value to the life enrichment directors on well-being, trying to engage residents, because we all know that's so powerful and important to people just staying active. So how I got connected with, no one signs up, we all know. I mean, the word, and, I know we use it with caregiver. I don't, especially as a male, it's like, I think I'm already an anomaly, the fact that I was in education, special education, but there's really not a lot of identifying men in caregiving. So I also want to kind of get the right, I guess how I would say it is, I am not round the clock full time as a caregiver. And so I think what I like is a good buddy of mine, Alex Drain, has created her Archangels, kind of helping people who are reluctant, don't identify. And she
Mhm.
really has done a great way to bring awareness to all those things that you wouldn't think are issues of caregiving. And so, but that doesn't say that I haven't given my dad a bath. I mean, when in a shower or whatever. I mean, when that happens, so unfortunately it just sort of happens, and my dad was a retired physician. He'll be 90 this year. And we have a personal caregiver for him, but she can only make it for so many days. So sadly enough, it's just filling in those gaps and
Mhm.
doing what's needed. And so it's really hard because my mom's 84 and she should not be doing a lot of those things. So I am involved in those things. And then the other thing that's really important to my dad is the social. So he loves just going for rides or in the car, and too long sometimes. So I have to tell him after about 2 hours,
Yeah,
we're
time.
done. We'll do it later. So that's really what he likes, and it's interesting. It's this. I think it's a little bit of reminiscing therapy because
Mm.
as a doctor he would drive to work every day, and so he still would want to go to his office. And sometimes I say, like, Dad, we're not going, because he has a walker. He wants to kind of, I don't want to say order me, but kind of direct me what he wants to do. And so I don't know, it's just really meeting him, being there with him. So
Mhm.
anyway, that was sort of my journey, and I'm just still trying to help both my parents right now with that. And the big thing is we got them out of their house into a smaller community, and so
Mm.
I'm sure that there's probably going to be another big time where we're more involved too, helping them with that care. So.
Yeah, that's a win. I think having the support is so helpful, and we step in when there's a need. And I think as families, we do that, right? We see where we need to be available and helpful because we want them to live the best life that they possibly can. I had a couple of thoughts as you were talking about. I love that life enrichment piece. I don't know if you know this, but my background, I worked in a senior living community overseeing the recreation department for a lot of years, and it really shaped my lens on how we provide care and really giving those residents that purpose and that excitement to wake up every day and have something to look forward to and be involved in and really personalize that. So I appreciate that you were able to, help encourage people in that. And you talked also about the term caregiver. I agree. I think it's hard because it's the term that's universally used. Although most of us don't really identify as a caregiver, we're thinking, I'm just helping mom or dad. I'm helping my neighbor across the street. So, understanding kind of the language around that, and when we're talking to people, being able to see where they're at and help them identify as such. Because I think when we do, there's so much more support that is available when we look for it. Although it can be hard to find if we're not in that mindset.
No, absolutely.
I think too, the social piece, getting your dad out and you recognized kind of what he needs and what makes him happy, and taking him out for those drives and it's a fun way to spend time together. I think a lot of times for families that when I've had conversation, they're not quite sure what to do with mom or dad, right? Things are
Hmm.
more limited, and it's just really just spending time and asking
Hmm.
questions and
Yeah.
learning and doing that. And I think so much can happen from that.
Yeah, it can. And I guess the hardest thing is, obviously I have things to do, got work, got projects, you name it. So it's hard, it's like that hour, 2 hour drive. I mean, I hate to say it, but he would, there's only but so much. So that's the challenge of, I don't want to say the guilt, but
Mhm.
I can only be there but so many times and so long. And so just trying to make the most of it and be productive is the biggest challenge I find.
Yeah, it sounds like so you started your career path before you probably had to step in a little bit more for your parents. And do you find that that shaped your lens on then how you support them and cared for them? Because you kind of have that like inside, scoop, so to speak.
There's no way to separate that perspective. The only thing is, it's totally like every caregiver experience is a unique, isolated experience
Hmm.
because people are unique.
Yeah.
And so I don't care how much time you've been in the field until it's like your own experience with your own family, that dynamic is unique in itself. So, yes, with some resources, yeah, DME, yeah, like, you'd have like my mom, like, wouldn't want to get two shower benches for the other. We have another, we have a beach house. I'm like, I'm going to go out and buy, it's just
Hmm.
stuff like that. So it's just dealing with, I think it's really hard as being a son or a daughter as a family. There's so many things that come up, the stubbornness, and I think universal, I will say, yes, that I understood because no one gets older. No, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but
Hmm.
I don't get AARP yet, but I think at 35 you can join. So just to let you know, I've
Right.
heard that. So I don't know, you can get a
Nice.
bunch of discounts, but I think the big thing was, yes, I know the kind of context that you have to be really respectful of people, their privacy, their dignity, but still, when it's your parents, you're dealing with a lot of resentment. I'm the youngest son, so
Mm.
between my sister and I, then you get this, okay, we're the closest by, so we're expected more, and it's just all that other stuff,
Oh,
family
yeah.
dynamic stuff. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
can say a whole podcast on that. We'll stop on
Yeah,
that.
it definitely highlights those family dynamics when you were caring for mom or dad. It really does. Things come out where you're like, oh, we haven't maybe dealt with this in years, but now it's happening, all of those emotions. Yeah, that is a whole nother podcast. It is. I know you're really passionate about bringing tools and tech to older adults and families, specifically being socially isolated. And the conversation around, okay, every 2 out of 3 caregivers being female, do you find that being a male in a caregiving role is isolating as well?
That question, I would say, I feel like I don't fit the role, and I think everyone doesn't fit the role when you ask them.
Mm-hmm.
But we have resources. So my situation, I know there's so many people that are in a real strapped situation where they're, whether they're a parent, a single parent, or they're limited income, limited resources, and then they're doing 2 jobs or they're working. So, with all transparency, my dad has a long-term care policy, but still the reluctance is it's just mind-boggling how difficult it is for decision making as that
Mm-hmm.
son to help them. Okay, we have resources. Why don't you do this?
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest barrier that came across is my mom's life was going to be changed. People don't want a caregiver to come in for their loved one because then they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have someone 20 hours a week coming into our our house. So, as a male, going back to what you said, do I think it's isolated? I think for me, I think when I look at like events or things that are caregiver, I don't identify because maybe I'm the only male.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in that sense, I feel kind of like not that I don't connect with that. But I'm glad that you reached out to me on this show because I do think it is important. And why is it important? Because it's a topic that I think caregiving is much like mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so the caregivers do suffer, and not necessarily me, but more that are really on dealing with older, the sandwich generation,
Yeah.
with mental health, the risk scores are all there. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel that I'm a little insulated from that because there's support and resources, which is not fair, but unfortunately there's nothing fair about healthcare.
Yeah.
Though I do think that caregiving is really important to be bringing more awareness because it is healthcare, and I think it's a lot like mental health because
Mm-hmm.
that we don't typically identify as caregivers nor mental health, and those are the 2 areas that I think need more conversation, and it's just talking about it, whatever
Yeah.
it be. So just like what you're doing, so important.
Thank you. That's such an important thing to highlight is that it is just having the conversation and bringing that awareness to it and letting people know they're not alone, right?
Mhm.
I think sometimes especially in that role, it can feel more isolating because maybe our siblings or people around us at work aren't necessarily in that, right? Caregiving is so unique in that same situation. But hearing from you, hearing your story, hearing your perspective, I think gives people, we can like pull out those little nuggets of like, okay, I relate to that. I can see what they're saying. I'm encouraged by that. And that's really, really helpful. Along with that, I know given your just extensive background, which is so cool that you bring that to this space, is you have more of a pulse on what's happening in this world of healthcare, tech, caregiving. And what do you see as some of those challenges for caregivers right now? If you had to pick like, okay, these are kind of the big ones. What is that? What are you noticing?
I think family, the biggest challenge is the balancing and the guilt, I think, and the resources and the time and the expectation. And so I think, unfortunately, those that are caregivers often are not able to get time away from work. There's very little resources and so, or understanding. So I think our economy, though there are with COVID, we did do the remote. Now there's still this challenge to transition back. But what we really, I think there needs to be more support for caregivers to continue to be in the workforce and then get some support. So I know
Mhm.
there's different programs like respite, but it's a lot of these programs you just don't know about. So I think that would be the most important thing is to help caregivers get some time off just to maintain their stress. And then I think also to be able to connect through whatever platforms or however it be where they can commiserate and help. And I'm not really good at that. I don't know. I'm sure you could name lots of them, just like your podcast, what it's already doing is a way to bring, listeners and audience and guests together. But I think that's probably a big thing is really
Mhm.
people that are in it have way more credibility and can help you more than, often your clinician or your doctor. That's the
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah. Do you see that there's families that step into that role do so because they're family and they're needed, but they don't necessarily know how to do some of the tasks or care for mom or dad. And so there's that lack of training, right? You just figure it out because you get by and not feeling, I think there's that feeling too of, am I really equipped to do this? Am I really able to do this the right way, even though I don't know if right is the right answer, but what do you think about that?
I think it's like one example is it's really about that I can see from my dad. He really has really bonded with his caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
and we were able to find her. And unfortunately, we can't get her enough. She's working at another agency, so
Mm-hmm.
she's like, I hate to say it, moonlight. So whatever that is, but it works right. Her and my dad really get along well. And so that would be impossible for him and I, like when it comes to the ADL, like the bathing and shower. I mean, that's just like I do that for him when it's needed,
Mm-hmm.
but that ain't happening like it is with. I mean, that woman is gifted in that. She's done it, and and she takes pride. I mean, she has her outfit, her uniform. But on the other hand, I do have a bond with my dad that's special. I'm his son. So the time, spending time and honoring him. And yes, if it means that he needs, of course, helping him get to the restroom or whatever it be. But so yeah, I would say being just thrown into it, you're like, and then you don't know what to do. And then also you're dealing with a lot of pride, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that are going on with family. That just that gets it's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
So
It does. Yeah, it does. I know. I remember I might have touched on this before, but I was helping a family member and they were in a transitional care unit and didn't have makeup or anything done, which is totally okay. And she was in the restroom and she looked in the mirror and she was like, who is that person? And wanting her lipstick and wanting to feel like herself. But I know, and I can only imagine that someday when I look in the mirror when I'm older, you think you don't recognize that person, right? Because it's dealing with the pride of that, like things are different and I've changed and that's okay, but it's a lot of emotional component in there too. Also touching on your vast experience, you had an opportunity last week to moderate at the Healthcare Tech Conference. So I'm really, really curious to hear what you experienced and learned and, help support, which is such a cool place to do that. How do you see businesses coming together to provide the leadership and actions to address care concerns to support those families and older adults?
Yeah, so the conference that I was a moderator at, it was at the HCT, and it was focusing on diagnostic and home care. And the three organizations were Homeward Health, MedArrive, and Dispatch Health. And they're really very similar, but very unique in what they're servicing and doing. And I see those sort of organizations are critical to getting it right. And it's sort of, we're at like, I hate to say it, but we've always been like, we're at the perfect time. But, but really, home health is going to the home. That's where the biggest, unfortunately, when you look at healthcare, the lowest spend. I mean, the biggest spend, of course, is at the hospital level. And so primary care and home care is a golden opportunity to spend more resources and get it right. And so the HCTIC was a conference that really brought all the home care executives, high level leaders in home care. A lot of them were some community leaders as well that were participating in the ACO, some value-based arrangements that have shown results. And technology is what's driving it. And what is that technology doing is predictive analytics, which now you have a population and you're able to say, oh my gosh, so-and-so, their score, whatever it be, they need a home visit real quick. And now we have payments that are actually incentivizing to actually transform the way you deliver. I really was pleased with the conference. I think the biggest takeaway is that you're still going to need healthcare tech. You can't, like, tech in itself is not going to solve this. It's healthcare is really about people, but technology can drive when done right. And, you need the payment structure too. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a blend. So, but such as the data analytics, the predictive, and also the interoperability. That's huge. We're still challenged. There's a lot of middleware technology, meaning, we got the big tech, Cerner and Epic in the hospitals, but there's several different. Still, we don't have the policy or regulatory and the home care as well that everyone can talk. I mean, whether it be the labs or whether it be, you name it. And I think home care, whether it be senior living communities, a good takeaway was just that they have so many ancillary providers, and we all need to be talking together. So I think that interoperability is so critical, so that we can all get on the same page, and that's through technology.
Yeah. I've noticed that where there's so many different companies that each kind of provide like a little piece of the puzzle, but not necessarily all together. And then as an operator, there's that, you've got all of these different people that want those partnerships and want to excel that tech forward in the community, but yet which one is the right one? Do they work together? Are there those collaborations? And it's finding out what does that and does that well. Are you seeing that the tech that gets it right, what framework is in place? Is it, I know you touched on that, like being socially minded and having that be a component as well, because it really is more about that, the people as well as the tech.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, a perfect example is Honor, which was acquired home instead. And so one of the individuals, high level leaders at the conference was saying, look, part of the acquisition and honor was, and the raise was to raise more money for all the technology. And they
Mm,
really, she just was full transparency that they got it wrong the first time.
mhm,
And I don't know what entirety that was, but it's not easy, to get tech right. So that I think is why, you need policy, you need leadership, senior leadership at the right level, and it's really expensive. And so I do not have that one right answer. I
mhm,
think you really need multiple stakeholders, and it really needs to have the leadership on board. And that's why I think the payment structure needs to exist. Because, and when I mean payment, that's like the ACO REACH is an interesting one where now for the first time, you're going to have physicians, clinicians able to actually be in a capitated model where they're being able to be up paid more frequently, whether it be quarterly or monthly, and they're able to reinvest in those partnerships with home care, skilling up whether they need to send a nurse out, because, otherwise so and so constantly would go for a UTI or whatever it
mhm.
be. So I think you have to have motivation. And so that not only technology, but it's a transform in the delivery and strategy. So it's not an easy process, and
Mhm.
technology is definitely a core component.
It's driving that. Are you seeing that there are those qualified leaders in the space? Do we wish there were more? Are they hard to find? What's kind of the
I think
landscape of
I think
that?
the problem is that we got a turf war in healthcare. Pharma benefits at consumer. I mean, so it's really that's the challenge, is having the hospitals working with the home care, and
Mhm.
and so there's that's part of the interoperability. What is one's competitive advantage. So I think that structurally makes it very difficult. SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, have a certain vested interest to have members there. And, but I think it requires leadership
Mhm.
to try to see which we see where it is going in the home. And so it's not an easy, I mean, I would like to think we're moving ahead and forward and not backwards, but we continue to see, the growth of costs now is from $4 trillion, and it's continuing. So anyway, I am hopeful,
Mhm.
with these experiments that we do at the CMS level, but still, it's not easy.
When you were mentioning there's all these different stakeholders, and I think we forget that, at least I do sometimes, that hospitals, right, senior living, home care, these are all primarily for profit businesses. So the more services that we need and receive, that generates revenue, which rightly so, right? Businesses need to run and make money to support people and provide those services. And it's understanding when do we step in and continue those services. And I think families face that decision a lot of, mom or dad are getting older. Are these interventions necessary? Are they
Mhm.
not? Do we do them because we feel like we need to? And I think that's a whole nother conversation of, there's
Mhm.
so much to try to navigate and figure out.
No, absolutely. I do think that, like, CMS initiative for 2030, which they boldly said that they want just about everything to be in value-based care agreements, value-based arrangements. And really, if you just think of it, it's accountable. You can't just do things without showing results and outcomes.
Right.
So that really is what I would hope with what you're saying, that we're not needlessly, which right now a lot, I don't know the figure, it might be 70% of the healthcare spend is 65 and older, and of course then you get some just younger disabled with driving up really some, really strange chronic disease. But really that education component would be way more emphasized, whether it be hospice or end of life treatment, which would be more quality of life. So I would hope that we would be starting to see more of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's really hard because when you get down to it at a personal level, you know, it's like as an American, like no one wants to give up. And so a lot of times that is driven by families, that
Mm.
individual that doesn't want to give up on cancer at last resort. But I really think it's highly critical to educate, to inform them of their disease risk, the outcomes, the prognostics. And I don't, that is, like you said, another podcast, you know, is very important to driving better awareness and
Mm-hmm.
seeing families benefit from that.
Yeah, it is. Another focus that I know that you're also really interested in is how do we have those global health and looking at climate and having healthcare really be a healthy environment.
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
know if you want to elaborate on that more because you are the expert in that. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on, do you think that that's also becoming more a part of the conversation where we're more of a socially conscious minded society?
Yeah, I would hope so. I think you see it. I guess my interest personally has gotten involved with this because I have been involved in a solar project, a farm, a family farm. So I was working on that, and that led me to getting more interested in the stakeholders with energy and then what's driving it. And so what's really driving all this is what is ESG, which is environmental social governance. And there's funds, mutual funds, whether it be from Vanguard, Fidelity, and then BlackRock, and there are multiple investments, just trillions of investments across the globe that are wanting carbon neutral, you know, and all these, you know, like from Netflix, Amazon, Apple, all these huge corps are driving this, and they're also wanting to find sources of energy that are carbon neutral, such as solar. And so going to healthcare, my hope and thought is that when you take social determinants of health, which are real,
Mm-hmm.
like how can you be healthy if you have no clean water? How
Right.
can you be healthy if you have no air? And unfortunately, typically it happens that marginalized or lower income are often at a greater disadvantage in that environment, that area that might not be as clean or it might be high levels of pollutants. And so the opportunity, I would say, is yes, there are some cool hospitals that are now doing some solar projects. They're either doing it on their building on site. There's Anthem down the street, a big, you know, one of the biggest insurers actually acquired or, you know, a long-term solar farm purchasing for their data, just for their data. So I would hope that leadership sees an opportunity to do that, even with farming, with as an educational play, you know, using green areas and, you know, urban kind of cool farming. I mean, I think it could be a
Mm-hmm.
really cool time. A lot of these healthcare organizations are not for profit, and they do have what's called a community health needs assessment, which
Mm.
is critical for them to do every few years in order to maintain their not for profit status. And so I see no reason that their energy, their social, you know, DEI, all those kind of big alphabet soups, all of them are really, in the end, let's be good stewards of our
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
and of our world. And unfortunately, this has often become such a political conversation. I wish it would not be, because there is problems. Tesla is great, right? But there's a lot of what we've heard is Tesla graveyards, just a bunch of Teslas just sitting there. So
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about solar and all these renewables, it's what we want to have is a full closed loop, closing the loop, where, you know, after Teslas are done, can we, you know, like the iPhones, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a third party, you recycle it, all these little things to improve. And so, but you still can start today. It's not an either or. Unfortunately, we do this because it becomes political. And so I just if the one takeaway is that this shouldn't really be a political talking point. I think we all could agree that, we want to really look after our resources, be good stewards to our world and our people, and then also be independent. So that's a really good opportunity too, to be independent in the US for our energy.
Oh, yeah. It's so important that you brought up that distinction of like, we don't want it to be political, because I think you had stated too that there's no health if there's no healthy environments. And we really just want to provide healthy places for people that we can be good stewards of the earth that we've been given and be able to give back and highlight that for people. So I appreciate you speaking to that.
And this is like mental health too. I mean, these last 3 days, the swell's good. I live in Virginia Beach. This isn't a shout out for tourism, but I've been surfing. There's something amazing that I get from going out for 2 hours paddling and surfing, and the water needs to be clean. I mean, sewage is the number one thing that happens. Sometimes it will happen when you can't go out, bacteria. I mean, it's that simple. So that's healthy. We have obesity challenges. We got multiple diabetes, and that is connected to people getting out and exercising, biking, and doing these things. So all of it's connected to us being healthier.
Yeah, there's even a lot of talk around. I don't know if you follow Andrew Huberman. He's a neurology, he's got a podcast. He's a professor at, what is it, Stanford, I think. But just even like stepping outside and looking at the sunlight and what that does for our mental health and our sleep cycle and all of
Mhm.
the little things that nature gives us when we interact with it, that's like scientifically proven. So I think
Mhm.
we want to go to the big fixes, but really it's a lot of these small fixes that we can incorporate in our day that can really improve our health and culture and mindset around it. What is your perspective on big tech such as Amazon moving into the older adult healthcare space?
I wish more people would speak out against Amazon.
Ah,
I don't know.
yeah.
We've given Amazon so much credit, and 1997, Jeff Bezos started what was an internet book company, and he was supposed to be taken out by Barnes and Nobles and Borders, and he's done amazing things. But I feel like there's five of these companies, Amazon, Apple, they're just way too powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and there needs to be more innovation. And innovation is not when one company gets to be about a billion or 2 billion and you just acquire.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think also in the fact that Amazon Care or whatever care, I forget their own brand of telehealth, they closed shop. So it
Mm.
sounds like their strategy now is to continue to acquire healthcare organizations that have a pretty well established business model, whether it be One Medical, Iora Health, which was then acquired One Medical. Their building healthcare from scratch has not been successful. And they have so much money. I mean, billions and billions that they're able, and they have to acquire in order to go and to continue to grow. So I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm not anti-capitalist. I think, unfortunately, this is a political thing that to me, these organizations it just concerns me when really now getting back to, I don't want to sound biased, but
Mm-hmm.
which I did sound like, but when you really get down to it, like Amazon's business model, and part of the reason they were saying that there was a challenge internally with their last company was the nurses just did not have a good support. They weren't educated well
Mm.
enough. They weren't trained, and their clients felt the impact on that. So there has been a really powerful, they do a lot of lobbying, they do a lot of PR, but their model is really to be as profitable and go into as many businesses as possible. So I mean, I know they have some amazing tech. You got Google and Apple, and so it just concerns me with big tech getting into healthcare is, it just, I don't see helping. I know like Apple has amazing user experience. I know Google tried to get into electronic record. I mean, we need protection, but I know people have been so excited about this and talking about it transforming, and I don't know. I just think nowadays technology is a utility in some ways, and the basic stuff, and where and why I say this is that really what my dad needs is the stuff that people don't want to be paying for, and it's the caregiving, and it's very difficult until they have robots or
Yeah.
whatnot. I think low tech
Hmm.
is, just simple tools that can help, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. When I look at that, I think that do we lose that accountability because they are so large that there's, right, the oversight really isn't there. And then what's felt and who feels that is the consumer and the older adults because they're not able to maybe have the needs met in the way that they would really like and or maybe at the standard that they want. And so I don't know, just a conversation I thought it's interesting to have.
Yeah, it is an interesting topic, and also on the other hand, they've done an amazing job from a
Mm-hmm.
consumer. That the fact that you just go like that and you've ordered a package.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no other company like them. They've totally disrupted retail,
Mm-hmm.
and but I healthcare is it is different, but when they do have the experience of doing and delighting in the customer, but yeah, I just really would love to see the primary care and the
Mm-hmm.
doctors, but it's really gotten hard. A lot of doctors, 40,000 docs retired during COVID. It's just so I don't know what the answer is. I hope some of these ACO reaches can help drive primary care back to autonomy, helping them lead and deliver good care. And I do think the conference that I was at, HCT, there are a lot of these other companies that are delivering care in the home that are using telehealth and different solutions, but it really is more just simple level
Mm-hmm.
tech. And so I think we've just overemphasized this amazing technology. It still requires people.
Yeah, the people, when you talk about the low tech and the simple tools and needing the people, I mean, that really is what it comes down to for a lot of families. They just need help getting mom to the doctor's appointment or stopping by and making sure groceries are there and that the companionship. And so, if we can figure out, maybe it's like taking a lot of those resources, paying those families to be able to, at livable wages or caregivers, it was such a place to start providing that respite care. I mean, those are like just the big ones that I see as those huge needs that would be the most impactful for people.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really a new frame of mind policy, and then really really empowering and helping to give families the resources to do the support. And I think it's really a policy. It has to have. We need the policy and the change, but I think unfortunately healthcare is so powerful
Mm-hmm.
that they've just changed a lot of the narrative and a lot of the conversations, that conversation almost sounds as if it's socialism. I mean,
Yeah.
socialized medicine, that you like covering the areas that aren't typically covered,
Mm-hmm.
and I think unfortunately it's hard. It's the hardest part of healthcare. Whereas to, have, provide pills,
Mm-hmm.
pills and devices and surgeries, so hopefully we'll see a policy change
Yeah.
because there's a lot of cost that is associated, productivity and all those things.
And if you think about it, there isn't this urgent need for someone to address this right now because families are always going to care for their loved ones, right? If something isn't available to help them or let's say give them everything that they need, they're not going to not do it. And so that's the tricky part is that until I don't know what that big thing is that happens and it shifts because
Yeah.
families aren't going to let their loved ones not be cared for. They're going to do it anyways, regardless of the situation, I think is what happens. And so, yeah, I think at a policy level is really the only way that that's going to really see itself through all of this hard stuff. But how are you hopeful? What encourages you about, as we move through these next few years, the options to support those caregivers?
I think what I'm hopeful for is being part of making things better. And then I'm reminded, my daughter's 12, she'll be 13 this week. And I'm like, my gosh, the future is going to be bright. And it's so easy to be negative because there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of problems. But it's about having the right perspective and really surrounding yourself with the right people. And I think you brought up a really good point that healthcare takes caregivers for granted because they're doing that. So it's like they're already doing that. Why are we going to pay them?
Yeah.
So we need to change the conversation. I think you doing what you're doing, and I think also workforce, it's all about the bottom line. So I think the younger generation, daughter seeing me help my dad, she knows, she's so empathetic. So I think it's just a matter of being more aware. And I would say also in the workforce place that the organizations that want to have good workers at a high level are going to have to provide resources and talk about these conversations. So I would say that would be a good, powerful awareness and a point of maybe a pivot and an opportunity to help and support caregivers.
Yeah, you talk about your daughter and seeing, the generation coming behind us and knowing that they are made up of people with really good hearts and a lot of innovation, and they've witnessed, right? Where they have the foresight that they've kind of seen what's coming up in front of them. And so I think that'll also move and create some movement to make change, because when we witness things that we're like, oh, I maybe would do that differently, it's really helpful. And it's been really fun to see that there are people coming together and there are people working for change and encouraging those around us. I think we all kind of help cheer each other on in a way, because we need that. We need that collective to come together. So I think it's going to be fun to see and challenging to see what all happens. But I'm thankful that you're here, and I'm so glad that you could share your thoughts and your insights with us. It is very valuable. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. It's been awesome being here.
Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.